on commercial vessels that are transiting the Strait of Hormuz, despite the 60-day waiver period called for in the Memorandum of Understanding. The U.S. president said that there would be no charging by the Iranian government either during the 60-day ceasefire, as he put it, or after the 60-day period has expired, the period, of course, being at which there should be a final agreement between Iran and the U.S. ending the war that started on February 28th. Now, while the Memorandum of Understanding does not specify that the Iranians have the legal right to impose fees after the 60-day period, the Iranians certainly believe that they do have that right. But the U.S. president said if anyone's collecting any tolls after that period, it will be the U.S. government doing so from countries, especially those in the region, that have come to count on it to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and to allow safe passage of their commercial vessels.
Ross, thank you very much for that. That's Al Jazeera's Roslyn Jordan reporting there from Washington, D.C. And here now is Mohammed Val in Tehran with more on what the Iranian government has been saying about the upcoming talks in Switzerland.
Fury from Israeli ministers over the agreement U.S. President Donald Trump has signed with Iran, and a sharp rebuke in response from his Vice President J.D. Vance. So what are the implications for Israel and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Per Nyberg. The Iran war has caused shockwaves globally, but the agreement to end the conflict signed by the US and Iranian presidents has stunned Israel's political establishment. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has not joined far-right ministers in openly criticizing the Memorandum of Understanding, but with a general election set for later on this year, the agreement is putting intense pressure on him. Just months after joining the U.S. to wage war against Iran, Israel's relations with Washington are also under significant strain. So how is the U.S.-Iran agreement being seen in Israel, and what difficulties does it pose for Netanyahu? We'll speak to our guests shortly. First, though, this report from Nargis Mobalagi.
After decades of political attacks on Iran, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finally achieved his goal of all-out war, attacking the country with the US in February. But while there at the start, he was not at the table in negotiations to end the conflict. The US agreement reached with Iran has rocked Israeli politics. Netanyahu's far-right ministers have reacted fiercely. Itamar Ben-Gvir says the agreement doesn't bind Israel and it's not a partner to the memorandum. Bezalel Smotrich calling it bad for Israel and bad for the entire world.
All right.
Those attacks on Trump from Israeli politicians and Netanyahu allies in the media received a rare rebuke from the top of the US administration.
Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world.
The Iran war could have profound effects on Israel's security posture and for Netanyahu's future. He's the longest-serving prime minister in Israel's history, with a career that spans the last 3 decades. Netanyahu is standing trial on corruption charges, including bribery, fraud and breach of trust, cases that have been delayed multiple times due to the Iran war and Israel's genocide in Gaza. Israel must hold elections by October 27th, with polls suggesting Netanyahu could lose power. His opponents will hope the US-Iran agreement will prove his downfall, his unpopularity reflected by some on the streets of Tel Aviv.
I really think it's bad. Like, I feel like it's a shame for the process if this is where we ended up.
I'm very disappointed in what happened because it's like, of course, it's putting USA first before Israel. it just sucks for us.
I think this is a bad agreement for Israel because we didn't achieve our goals.
Trump has demanded a Lebanon ceasefire must be enacted, and Iran says it's a prerequisite for talks. Netanyahu is faced with a stark political dilemma. With an election months away, continue the war in Lebanon and defy US President Donald Trump, or end the conflict and face the fury of right-wing allies and others back home. Nargis Moballeri, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
In real conversations, voice carries more than words. A pause can hint at confusion or anger.
You saw that his murder weaponized even before the suspect was apprehended, and the quote-unquote radical left being blamed. I think we've reached a very frightening turning point. We've already seen an assault on civil liberties, on institutions, universities, the media that are tasked with maintaining an open society. That will now be accelerated. I don't take any of this rhetoric lightly. I look at it as three phases. First, we saw those who protested the genocide attacked as anti-Semites, although a significant percentage, 20-30%, were probably Jewish. That was a way to shut down free speech. Then we saw undocumented workers being targeted and demonized as criminals and all this kind of stuff as a way to build Trump.
Here in the UK, Sadiq Khan's decision to block Palantir working with the Met Police has led to attacks on him as valuing ideology over public safety. However, in spurning reliance on the US tech giant, Khan now has significant company. France has this week announced its spy agency will stop working with Palantir, and that's over surveillance fears. Palantir has been used by French spy agencies since 2015 and the terrible terrorist attacks they had then. And they've been using Palantir to help sift through huge amounts of data to try and identify terrorist threats. And as recently as May, France's interior minister, so that's their equivalent of our Home Secretary, told French MPs that alternatives were still not good enough, sort of homegrown alternatives were still not good enough to replace Palantir. So Laurent Nunez, their interior minister, had said that while sovereign technology should be an aim, it was still not possible to drop American services. However, more recent events appear to have shifted opinion in Paris. So most notably, the announcement last week by Anthropic that Donald Trump was banning Anthropic from providing their most advanced models to European customers, or indeed any non-American customers. The news was sort of made public by Anthropic, who made this post on X. So they said the US government, citing national security authorities, has issued an export control directive to suspend all access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States, including foreign national Anthropic employees. The net effect of this order is that we must abruptly disable Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all our customers to ensure compliance, access to all other Claude models is not affected. This rung alarm bells in Europe because clearly we're becoming reliant on technology from a country that's using technology as a geopolitical weapon. And that development was explicitly cited by French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu, who announced the new policy on Palantir, or not using Palantir anymore for the French spy agency. So the French Prime Minister said this: France must have its own tools we cannot rely on the goodwill of certain partners who, as we have seen in recent days, are capable of cutting off access to the Anthropic model. All sounds very reasonable. There's no pretending, though, that this will be easy. To support the development of domestic AI, France has pledged an extra 600 million euros in public investment towards homegrown AI. That might sound like a lot of money, but to put that into perspective, the four big US tech giants, so Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta, it's not even including SpaceX, are planning to spend $700 billion on AI infrastructure in 2026. So 600 million by the French government, 700 billion by the US tech giants. Now that would mean that the French budget, or at least the budget from the public sector, would sort of be used in about half a working day in Silicon Valley. Aaron, obviously the logic here is watertight. Like European countries, our country as well, should not be reliant on American tech for sort of crucial national security functions or internal security functions when you have an American government which is willing to use it as a geopolitical weapon and just switch it off.
Yeah.
At the same time, those big companies are piling an amount of money into AI development which the Europeans cannot compete with. And so you are in a bind. I mean, I say it's worth a try. Like we didn't have Palantir, a few years ago, and we still managed just fine. So maybe we can just wait another 5 years until we make our own Palantir. But I don't know. What do you think?
So I don't think we necessarily need Palantir for many things. I think often people have a very expensive technology and they just want to use it. I think many issues with regards to public health in this country or policing, actually the solution isn't technology, right? The police love to say, well, we'll have data recognition systems and pattern recognition systems, or maybe just have police officers who are better at solving crime, who are more motivated for whatever reason, have better leadership, right? These things literally don't cost anything. We saw this, by the way, with Iran. This is something that's very hard for Westerners to comprehend, is that ideology is, one example, is a resource. It doesn't cost anything. It's very hard to put a price on the ideological resilience that the Iranian population had, at least about 10 million plus of them, when they were confronted with what America and Israel were doing to them. It's very hard to do that. Countries like China, Iran, Soviet Union historically have thought about these things, us less so. So do we need Palantir? Maybe, maybe not. In terms of the figure we're giving for the United States and the investment they're putting into AI, I mean, obviously lots of that's speculative and it's a waste of money. Should the Europeans be spending billions on this stuff? Possibly. Certainly in terms of things like a replacement for AWS, we don't have really web servers.
That's Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, right. We don't have, there are some cloud, there are cloud companies in this country as well, but the few significant ones in Europe are in France. Europe needs more of those, right?
So that's the data center, right?
Yeah.
But a data center used for cloud services as opposed to training AI.
I'm giving one example. We're going to have to spend billions on this stuff. I mean, whether or not you think machine learning is good or bad, sovereignty on things like cloud services is going to be really, really important. Let's have a conversation about it. I think you're talking about, yes, state investment by Paris, but also you do have major companies beginning to emerge like Mistral in France.
That money is not going to go directly on data centers. I suppose that's going to be seed money to try and support a flourishing AI industry in the private sector.
So, and also don't forget these major increases to defense budgets, lots of that's going to go towards AI procurement. And if they're not daft, which by the way, they really are, it ideally wouldn't be going to foreign AI companies, it'd be going to domestic ones. So I'm very realistic about technological autonomy and technological sovereignty. You aren't a sovereign country if your security services use AWS, which I've talked about many times. MI5, MI6 use AWS to operate. And if Bezos is told by the American government, kill access to that stuff, we're screwed. Same with the F-35s. I'm sure there's a kill switch. I'm sure it's the same with Trident. You need a level of technological autonomy. And that doesn't mean it's like ultranationalism, jingoism, jingoistic Bastani and Michael Walker. Maybe there's shared European capability for some of this stuff. I think it probably has to be, right?